And like that, I'm back already. I said to myself, I got nothing going on for another couple hours. Why not do an update about your recent metal purchases, your listening pile, what you're passionate about? And I said, okay. So here we are, back at Ground Zero Salem. The previous video is uploading. Been talking about a lot of hardcore on the channel lately. It's what I've been into a lot. I've been into just as much metal, however, and have acquired a few great things. Specifically, 5 or 6 great things. I didn't count. One thing just arrived today, which is what we're listening to right now. Haven't even listened to it all the way through, so I'm not going to get too into detail, but this is Interment, Where Death Will Increase, 91 through 94. Collection of 3 demos by this cult Swedish DM band. This arrived on my doorstep, courtesy of one Wyatt X Him today, and I've listened to this material before. Sounds right along in there with the big 4 of Swedish death metal. You know who they are. Not really adding much, but to me that's not a bad thing. It's just classic, grinding, abrasive Swedish death metal. It's wonderful. They have a newer album that I bought and still haven't even listened to yet. Anyway, got a bunch of stuff. Still have some stuff from the visit to Armageddon that I will conclude. That was a couple of weeks ago, as well as a few other odds and ends I want to talk about. I got more stuff even that I haven't really even dug into enough yet to fully discuss. So let's start off with one of the best of the year, in my opinion. Other people have talked about this with good reason. It's probably going to be a lot of on a lot of album of the year lists, end of the year lists for people. This is Innumerable Forms, Punishment and Flesh on Profound Lore. Initially a one-man project, the brainchild of Justin DeTore, aka DFJ. If you're into hardcore, you probably know who he is if you have any taste. He was in Mental, he was in Mind Eraser as the vocalist, countless others almost. As for metal, he was in Funebrum, I'm saying that right, with Daryl Kahan. Just a journeyman. I think initially drummer first, but spread out into other instruments. Fucking really, really good musician. Fantastically talented guy. The lineup's been fleshed out with a bunch of heavy hitters from other bands. The main songwriter from Iron Lung, Jensen Ward, I believe his name is. Couple of guys from all over the country. Doug Cho from Boston, who played bass in Rival Mob. Got a guy from Power Trip and a bunch of other bands from Texas. Mammoth Grinder. Another guy from Red Death and Genocide Pact. Don't remember the names off the top of my head. What is important is that all these guys are fantastic musicians and have concocted one hell of a dark, primarily slow death metal record. I'm not gonna use the Death Doom thing, not because it fits, but I'm just tired of saying it and hearing it. Drawing a lot of inspiration from the Finnish bands, you know, particularly Abhorrence. That's been name-checked a bunch. I hear it, but it's way more doomy than that. There's a few modern bands like Hooded Menace that also come to mind, but they're doing their own thing. The riffs are just crushing. It's a fucking boulder of a release. Not too much going on in the insert here. I'll just kind of show that to you. When they do employ melodic elements, they do it really well. The solos are particularly haunting, despair-filled, very, very guttural vocals. As you can imagine, the drumming is top-notch because I think everybody in this band was primarily a drummer at some point. So rhythmically, it's very, very on point. When they do speed up, they have sort of like pseudo blasts that are like blast beat style, but almost verging on not fast. It's hard to explain, but like all toms, you know. Very, very fucking cool stuff. Then I've been waiting on this since I heard their first 12-inch not that long ago. This is Churchburn. None Shall Live, the Hymns of Misery on the Armageddon label. Beautiful gatefold packaging here. was not aware, because apparently I was living under a rock, that this is a bit of a, super group as well. It features Dave Suzuki of Vital Remains and a bunch of other bands on guitar and vocals, and another gentleman from Grief and a bunch of other bands as well. So these guys are veterans, and they're playing, like I mentioned when I talked about their record a few updates back, it's sort of sludgy, blackened metal. There's nothing really quite that sounds like it. The vocals on this release have a slight amount of effect on them. They're very harsh and almost kind of noisy. What really pulls it in for me is there's great repetition in the riffing, but there's also just this great tasteful kind of like heavy metal influence in terms of the leads, the way the riffs kind of terminate. Everything's just pulled together very, very nicely. It's excellent, doomy, extreme metal that really defies categorization, although I would say that if you're a fan of sludge, go for it. If you're a fan of slower death metal, go for it. And black metal, to a certain extent, go for it. It does have a very kind of cold vibe to it that is really great. Armageddon label came out this year. I'll include links for everything down below. Check them out. Support Armageddon, absolutely. Fine people over at Armageddon. And then here's a release that I didn't even know was coming for the longest time. This band puts out stuff every 4 years, it seems like. Last release being Hellfire and Funeral Bells from 2012. This is In the Shadow of Doom by Faust Coven. One of my favorite Nuclear War Now bands. Extremely underrated, in my opinion. Up there with Sacrifix and Villains as far as underrated bands. Maybe this release will get them a bunch more traction. I don't see why it would not, because it's the best thing they've done so far. Faust Coven was originally a one-man band, much like Innumerable Forms. It was Gunnar Hansen, who was doing all the instrumentation except for drums, and a drummer. Tombstalker, I think, was the name he went by. This comes on this really cool seafoam green. I got the Die Hard. I'm not usually a Die Hard guy. I don't really care about bells and whistles and colored vinyl, but this was just too cool to pass up. It came with a patch, a sticker, a bonus 7-inch, which is always a big plus because you get more music. Old School War, which is an older song, re-recorded. Chaos Descends, which is a Sirith Ungol cover. A little 7-inch there. Kind of hard to see that green on green cover. At any rate, Faust Coven combine doom metal and black metal in a way that I didn't think was possible until I heard the band. Their earlier albums have a much more drawn out, sort of sprawling sort of feel to them. Both of their first two LPs are both double LPs. They're very long. They're excellent. I recommend them. But on the last release, Hellfire and Funeral Bells and In the Shadow of Doom, they've tightened things up, kind of cut away the fat, if you will. Brought the songs down to around the 5-minute mark for the most part. Fewer shorter, fewer longer. But the music itself is just incredible. They seem to invoke a lot of the raw side of second wave black metal and a lot of the first wave stuff as well. Just that ancient, morbid kind of stuff. You know, they are Norwegian, so you can probably hear some Darkthrone and Burzum in there a little bit. But I hear just as much Greek stuff, really. And a lot of classic 80s doom. There's even a couple of songs that almost have like a 70s, almost kind of bluesy vibe on them. The vocals are mid-range, a little bit of an echo. Kind of reminds me of Verathron a little bit, really early Verathron stuff. And it's just fantastic. There's harmonica on a song that adds a really nice sort of atmosphere to it. And this comes with a novella. Comes with a short story, which I started reading. I haven't finished yet. But it's just a fantastic way to flesh out the whole package. You know, it's really cool reading this while the music's playing. So far, it's just a guy on a horse that's encountered a bunch of guys hanging from trees. We'll see where that ends up, you know. I'll keep you posted. So that's the newer stuff that I got. Very fucking cool. I'm not going to bother showing off the patch and the sticker because it's just not my style, but very, very great. I recommend giving them a listen. You know, there's nobody that quite sounds like Faust Coven. High quality production. It still has sort of a cold black metal vibe, but the end result is something so much more than any of the genres that I mentioned. It's very much its own beast. Also, at Armageddon, I saw this and decided to snap it up. Chronic Decay, Justify Your Existence. Calling this a re-release would be a misnomer, because it was an unreleased album from 1994. Never came out. Other than this, they recorded a handful of splits and demos and stuff like that. They have a track on the Projections of the Stained Mind comp that I really like. And this is, I don't know why this didn't come out. This is awesome. One of the main members went on to be in Meanwhile and Dischange, so there's a connection to crust punk there. You can hear a little bit of that kind of untethered sort of punkish intensity to this, but for lack of imagination, I'd say this is death thrash stuff, and if you watch my channel, you know I like that stuff a lot. I'd say, like, the sound's almost kind of like in between Schizophrenia and Beneath the Remains as a starting point, and Sadist a little bit. There's a little bit of Swedish death metal as well going on there. Razor sharp riffing, shouted, slightly growled kind of vocals. I read a review online just kind of trying to prepare the words or get inspiration to describe this, and they said the closest Swedish band this comes to is Merciless, and I would agree somewhat in that, like, out of that early 90s death metal scene, these two bands, Merciless and Chronic Decay, were the most thrashy as far as that scene goes, but Chronic Decay is far more in the thrash realm of stuff. There's nothing really blackened or evil about this, you know. It's very Slayer inspired. You know, you might say early Necrophobic it gets kind of close to as well, but really relentless. I mean, if you were to pick an adjective for this, I'd say relentless. It does not give up, it does not quit. It continues fucking slapping you in the mug throughout. Really fucking awesome. One that I didn't really get too blown away by, Disgrace Volume 2. I know Disgrace stuff is hard to come by, so I just saw that iconic logo and pretty much just snapped it up without thinking too much about it. And I'm not suffering buyer's remorse that much. This is another unreleased album. Finland's Disgrace. This is from sometime 1993, and you can hear the 1993 in it. You can hear the Epic Records Earache merger all over this. It's Death and Roll. Came out on Svart. Lots of groovy riffs. You can get jiggy to this. Lots of funky drumming. You know, it's got that hard rock 70s meets death metal thing that got to be so prevalent at a certain point after Wolverine Blues came out. Doesn't directly sound like Wolverine Blues, but it's got that a lot. The classic rock gone death metal sort of thing, with a lot of you know, sort of syncopated, goofy rhythms. Probably unreleased for a reason. The riffs are really good. That's the thing. I wish they were doing something else with the drums on this, but I really like the riffs, and I do enjoy this. I just, one side of the record's okay enough for me at the time, and then I just kind of put it away. Who knows? Maybe it's a grower. Not so much my bag. Then finally we've got Fatum, Russian band, crust thrash. This is Life Dungeons. I picked this up from the Von Frost distro, along with a CD that I'll talk about at a later point. I need to absorb a little better, but this is fucking awesome. I've known who this band is for a while now. I just love their aesthetic. I love their artwork. It's, you know, this really intricate Celtic knotwork. Very Dungeons and Dragons, which I'm a big fan of. Nice printed inner sleeve as well. Thick, sturdy packaging. Looks like a player's manual. Monsters Manual. Comes on really cool matching vinyl. This is the center labels for you. Musically, a lot of sacrilege from the UK going on in there. Lots of sacrilege. Tight, thrashing, kind of, you know, branching out of speed metal into punk territory. Stuff going on. Significant amount of amoebics in the slow parts as well. Very, very good stuff. I'll put links if you're curious about this, but extremely well put together music as well as well put together artwork. And that's it. 2 short updates, not going up at the same time. In case you're wondering, I have changed my shirt since you saw this. That's it for now, folks. Be sure to hit subscribe if you want. Be sure to comment if you got something to say. Hit the like button if you like it. Don't if you don't. You know the deal. You know where I stand at this point. Yeah, talk to you guys soon.